Yeah.
All right, is everyone settled in?
Good?
Yeah. All right, open up your slides.
Right.
All right, let's open up this fucking slides. We're adults, it's okay.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Welcome to the Navel Decision making class. So this was kind of just a fun idea to bring up and kind of as a community kind of talk about navels. Specifically, if we're thinking this is navel season coming up, just a little talk through. You guys are welcome to ask questions during each slides if you want to, or whenever. Feel free to raise your hand or whatever, or just talk.
We'd rather talk about it while we're all looking at it than some mysterious aftertime.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah, whatever.
Who's this person?
Like on the album cover?
Yeah.
I assume that's Cascada, buddy.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So at the very end, there's a
We have a
Spotify
Spotify
link.
playlist.
There's a Spotify playlist if you want to
Nice.
Familiarize yourself.
Hell yeah.
Just for intro's sake, my name is Rachel. I work at both Velvet Elvis and The Powers That Be. I've been piercing for about 18 years, which feels weird to say. And I deeply love doing navel piercings.
My name is Max, for those who don't really know me. I work at Velvet Elvis. Also, if I'm talking too low, please let me know. Yeah, I've been piercing for 10 years. Navels are for me. They're not my favorite. I always feel like I could do better. But I also don't like to turn them away, so that's why I'm here. Next slide, by the way.
Slide, yeah.
So yeah, this is for fun. Once again, it's for fun. We are not endorsed by any organization. We have licenses in, well, you have Pope States, I have license in Oregon. And once again, this is for fun. So if something seems weird and you're all like, you really do that? Feel free to ask why and a bunch of questions.
Are y'all ready? Next slide.
Next slide.
Yeah.
All right.
Woo!
All right, so our philosophy starts at yes. So basically, starting at yes allows us to have more clarity on how we're gonna work, how this puzzle is gonna work. So we're thinking of the navel as a puzzle, and our jewelry will be the puzzle pieces. So ideally, we're trying to make these work together instead of jamming puzzle pieces in. We want them to work cohesively. So that's kind of the philosophy. Instead of going absolutely not, maybe think about how we can get these puzzle pieces to work together. Next slide.
And sort of by starting at yes, we really maintaining client autonomy is really important to us, and so we really want to start at yes instead of going into this anatomy consult that I'm going to assume most of us do as deciding on yes or no. We try really hard to start at yes and see what structures are there, and then what we need to do to sort of solve those structures in order to help the client get what they want, and talking to them through all of these choices that we're making, because we really want people to get the thing they want, even if it might not look exactly how maybe they thought it would. And we'll cover this a little bit more later, but sometimes it also includes doing a piercing that maybe isn't perfect for their anatomy, and we want to make clear about that too, but we talk to them about it and informed consent, and everybody's on the same page. And as long as that happens, I think we can be doing piercings that make people happy even in the short term. Next.
All right, Billie Eilish once said, "What am I made of?"
It's a direct quote.
Next slide.
We're not going to talk a ton about anatomy, but some pieces are important, mostly in that most of us have sort of abdominal lines, and we've all seen those show up on clients. Some are high, some are right above someone's navel, and some are right at their navel. I try really hard to explain to people that that's just the underlying musculature that is unchangeable for most people. And so it just is what it is, and so it's not, people aren't going to bargain maybe, well, what if I have some magical event in my life happen? And so that's the important part about the musculature to me. And then the other important part hernias are pretty specific, and I actually think they're not as common as maybe they might appear to be, because these sort of soft, bubbly things that most people have are not hernias. Hernias feel very stiff. I've actually helped people pop them back in. I don't admit that on camera. Loved ones. I've helped loved ones pop them back in, and they feel very specific. There's a big sign above my head that says "not a doctor," but they're really different than kind of the squishier structures that we see on a lot of clients. And so next slide is sort of just a clear example of that, with like a really hard structure that is clearly maybe something we shouldn't be touching. And then sort of the other client that, you know, I can't exactly say what it is, but it's pretty likely that it's not a hernia and that it's pretty safe to pierce around. It isn't a hernia, Mom. And next.
All right, next slide. Can we pierce it?
Yes, you can.
Yeah!
Thank you. All right, next slide. Yeah, so variables to investigate, and this basically, you know, comes with a client anatomy check, which most of us most likely are doing, and if not, highly suggested. So we're looking for ledge in all positions, laying, sitting, standing. We're looking for depth on the inside. We're looking at the apex or peak, which is our top point. So, you know, we're looking at entrance, exit, or whichever way you pierce. We're looking at collapse and roll, which are two separate different things. And then we're looking at interior structures. So beyond just the overall image of what we see as the stable, we want to check out what's going on the inside too. How do things collapse within the inside? Next slide.
Next, and then sort of the puzzle pieces that will help you sort of quote unquote solve for someone's anatomy is all of the jewelry elements. What? Are you looking at my proudest moment?
Is anybody else divided into two different groups?
I know it can be a lot to carry, and it can take a while to build this amount of stock, but having all of these jewelry elements will help you solve for different people need. So gem balls are pretty important. If I gotta choose, I'm usually going with a gem ball. Cabs and ovals, some people can get them, but you know, not everybody. Gem bezels are a pretty decent choice. Curves in 14 and 12. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we find both thicknesses to be useful on different anatomies. Balls in a bunch of different sizes. And then we deeply love M&Ms, both the small boys at 5/32 and the larger friends at 3/16. And next.
All right, so to bring it back, you know, I need you all to sing this song next. So yeah, I mean, bringing it back to, we're putting, you know, puzzle pieces together to go into that puzzle. So number one, you know, move the client all around in three major positions. So the classic sitting, standing, laying down, double check everything. Ask yourself, what are the challenges that present themselves? Like, what are we looking at? What is, you know, the common or least common denominator? What do I need to adjust my jewelry for? And then number three, what jewelry choices can be made to solve these challenges? So, you know, we don't want to keep it binary. We don't want to go like, hey, I'm going to throw this 7/16 curve in there. We want to figure out what pieces we could put together to throw in there. And then number four, we want to match those shapes to solve the unique anatomy. So once again, figuring out, you know, what piece, also if I'm talking too fast, I'm so sorry. So yeah, we're, you know, figuring out what shape this anatomy is and what piece of jewelry will fit most comfortably. So definitely, you know, inner ledge, do we have a nice curve? Can an M&M fit in there, or a ball? Or can I throw a 6mm, you know, whatever in there? And then number five, choices are not binary. So starting with a non-binary mentality, we can figure out a way to say yes instead of an automatic, no, I can't do this.
Next up is going to be all of our case studies. So we're going to start to look at a bunch of these.
All right,
Next slide.
so next slide. So this is oh shit. Okay, this is a client. Your client comes in. They're like, "Hey, check out my belly button." My name. So considerations with this particular person was the ledge is not clearly defined. There's possible what the possible jewelry orientation will be when this person is sitting, standing. And for me specifically, my biggest question was, will the jewelry sit vertically or will I have a little bit of an angling situation going on? So on your left, you'll see the client just laying down, and that was like the least common denominator out of everything because sitting, standing looked great on my end. Like I could throw something in there. But laying down, the ledge gets a little bit tricky. Second picture, kind of see that enough to turn it, I had to turn it inward. So that came into play with how will my jewelry sit. And if you think about how that ledge is, I gotta turn it outward because it naturally turns inward. My jewelry will most likely not sit vertically, so I had to pierce more up, just perpendicular to that tissue, so the jewelry would sit more of an angle versus just vertically up and down. Jewelry that I used for this, if I recall, it was about a possibly 3/16 M&M, and then a 6mm cap, and of course, a curved barbell in there.
Next.
Next slide.
So I really love like depth challenges, and so this particular client, you can see the first photo on our left, that is them laying down, and it got pretty shallow. They still had a really well-defined ledge, but that sort of shallowness is why I chose to use a 14 gauge with 1/8" beads. So we did 1/8" beads to also then accommodate for the sort of secondary consideration of those internal structures that we're maybe not trying to have jewelry rest against. So even like a 5/32 bead probably would have been pressing down into that and helped press the whole piercing more outward and put it at risk, right? So we're doing something thinner to kind of slide it in there, smaller beads to not press into anything. And so yeah, it's probably shorter than many people might already be using. That's a 14 gauge 11/32. And I'll probably end up downsizing them to like 9/32. And so yeah, length is really important and being sort of creative with like, oh, well this goes here, where's the top? What's the depth I need to make this work and to not do sort of undue pressures? And next, still about depth, another sort of spicy example there. This client had you can see they have a well-defined crease kind of right above their navel, but the ledge stayed really perfectly formed through all three of the major positions. And so I couldn't pierce above that crease, of course, but they had a really, nice ledge there. So the answer was 5/16. A small gem, just to that's probably also what we had in stock at the time. But like I saw that healed in, about 8 months or so, and I know it did, and we didn't downsize it because of the gems, but the short length doesn't mean you're doing them a disservice. Deeper is not better. And that leads into...
Next slide.
Question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I tend to find that when I pierce at this depth, and rarely do I use curves that short, when I pierce at this depth on the inside, I tend to find that it does that dolphin dive, kicks up really, really fast. Would you say that, would you use this depth at pretty consistently for, I don't want to say across the board, but naturally?
That is unusually short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, not the curve. I mean, how deep it is on the inside.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was probably determined by when they laid down. And that was probably also to make the gem be visible.
Okay.
Maybe kind of kicking it out just a little bit to make that gem be more visible. Sort of riding the line between perpendicular to the tissue versus having that gem show a little bit better. And that client had the anatomy where I could kind of make that sort of I can make this sit a little bit nicer, and I still think it.
What do you think that one was? Shallow or deep? Deep, yeah.
It's super case by case. I'm usually marking whole anatomy consults. I did the previous slide's depth because I knew that the depth was going to be interesting on that one. gem curve, probably with some standing, and then I like checked it through the different positions just to make sure I wasn't sort of cheating too much.
Yeah, so with like that the Sum 41 slide, that depth I did draw or mark with them laying down at first with the anatomy console just to see what kind of depth I'm using. And that, comes back to the client autonomy. This client wanted that shiny gem on the top and the bottom, and it's feasible with their anatomy. So I did mark in the console, figured it out, and then it was sort of a spicy choice, I'm not gonna lie. I did tell them, I would love to go maybe a touch deeper than what I actually did, but this had ledge. Their anatomy allowed it sitting, standing, and laying down, and they wanted the big old gem on the bottom, so it worked out perfectly. But yeah, I used to be in the camp of deeper equals better, and it absolutely doesn't. And a lot of times, jewelry just doesn't work if we go way too deep. There's other issues involved, but specifically if our client wants kind of like the quote-unquote traditional navel. And then next slide.
That one's my favorite.
Yeah. All right, everyone say Eminenomenon. Yeah. Okay, I love M&Ms. So most of the slides that you see with an M&M, those are basically mine. So I like to think of M&Ms kind of like a nice little cushy pillow that fits, thinking of an arch on the inside of that ledge. M&M, for the most part, follows that curve. So in jewelry, stocking many sizes of M&Ms works perfectly. So considerations with this particular client was that as soon as they stood, their anatomy became narrow. Not only just on the sides, but on the inside, everything kind of pushed out perfect.
You did a great job on this, by the way.
Thank you so much.
That's great.
So yeah, narrow when they stood up, and kind of bringing it back to what I said earlier, just finding the least common denominator and applying your jewelry to that. Because everything else was like, oh heck yeah, I could put whatever in here. But as soon as they stood, a 6mm gem would absolutely not fit super comfortably. Moisture issues, you name it, whatever. But yeah, that's M&Ms. Okay, next slide.
Next slide.
With that one, how old is it? Have you seen it fully healed and stuff?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a few weeks, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm terrible at taking pictures. So when Rachel was like, "Hey, let's do this," I was like, "Shit."
Yeah.
Pictures?
Time to take pictures.
Of course, I've been taking pictures for years.
Yeah.
Next slide with my girl. And so this is a good, maybe more complex example of several different factors. You can see where the apex is. There's a clear little soft spot. Boop, it goes there really clearly. But they had some internal structures. It's clearly a little off center, which we talked about, and they knew it kind of has to go here. But like an M&M, one, their navel didn't collapse, so we didn't need to. But it probably would have been like a three-dimensional object that sort of inner bulge that comes into it would have interacted with, and maybe made it start to turn. And so I love beads. I love an M&M, but I love beads because I think it can kind of snuggle into anatomies and sort of just like parallel park into certain tight spaces. And yeah, so when I do narrow things, I'm more often than not doing a bead on them. But if there is a peak, even if it's soft, there's usually a way for me to figure out how to say yes. If there's like a defined bottom, I can usually figure out what pieces I need to make this work out. And next.
What about that one? Is that one older or healed or?
That one is older. My memory can no longer tell me if I downsized it.
Yeah, cool.
All right, next slide. We're on Creed mode. So yeah, considerations with this one was a disappearing ledge, specifically when laying down, narrow insides, when sitting and standing, and specifically this person wanted a shiny gem. So as much as I, want to be like, hey, I'm gonna give you a really safe piercing, I always try to give back autonomy to this client. So fixed gem curve. It's a 4mm bead on the bottom. So that works perfectly. So something I love to do, if I can see clearly that there is a ledge when standing or sitting, when I have them laying down, I like to use a toothpick, or like you can use a Q-tip, whatever, just to gently kind of press on that ledge just to see if there is a viable area to actually pierce. Because if already, we have two of those major positions that have that ledge, we can work around that. We have, we can make that happen. And you'll see how in the next slide.
So this client is another great example of a pretty soft ledge. That photo on our left is them laying down. And there was an apex, but it's pretty rounded. But essentially I felt pretty good about the bottom, and then I chose to, we're not really talking a ton about technique, but I chose to do like a really exaggerated scoop on this particular navel to make it work out. This was also one of those decisions, right, that I actually think I could have used a bead or an M&M, and I kind of just had to make some choices, right? They had a full collapse when they sat, but with that softer ledge shape, a bead might have also been a good call. And it was just sort of like, what do I think is the most important factor to help them with irritation? And literally telling the client, like, I made this choice today. We're gonna see how this does for you. We might be making a different choice in 6 weeks. Kind of stressing the, like, I made choices. It doesn't mean that they're perfect. We should check back on this. But to know that those softer ledges are doable. Like, this is a pretty recent photo, but I've done hundreds of these kinds of ledges and absolutely seen them work out. And next, speaking of internal structures, I pierce in front of a lot of Audis, especially if people have that really well-defined ledge there with enough clearance in front of it. I have probably at least a minimum of 5 other photos very similar to this on different people that have that pretty firm internal structure. I'm certainly not going to pierce through it, but if underneath there's really clear, clearance, then I feel really good about piercing in front of it. And again, making sure of that's a 4mm gem on the bottom. I wouldn't want to do anything that really firmly pressed into it, but gently laying on it. Again, talking to that client, their ledge was so well formed. I felt really good about this.
I've done a few with J curves and they turn out really nice.
Sure. I haven't
done a
have
ton
great
of
luck
them,
with J curves.
obviously.
I see them flag around.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think they need a lot more tissue to work out well.
I think, it was
Yeah.
probably just depending on this client, but it
For sure.
worked out beautiful.
Yeah, like
for
the
that whole
slide
thing.
that Max had earlier with the really big cap on it, with the softer sort of the ledge that was interesting. I think a J curve could have worked out because that could have allowed it to be sort of still perpendicular through the tissue and had something visible on the bottom.
Right, but yeah, you don't want to stick it.
Yeah.
Hell out.
But J curves sometimes they have that weird corner in the back sometimes. I don't know. Depends on who's making them.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so I again, with just enough clearance, just like any other structure, you don't have to be. An Audi doesn't always have to mean no. And next.
All right. So considerations on this one. We had some roll. We had depth that collapses. And in this case, this client, and if you zoom in there, you can see that they had a prior piercing. So I think this one's a really good example of why carrying larger lengths is beneficial. So I don't entirely know what happened last time, if it was working out, whatever. Point being that it was pierced a little bit on the lower side. I threw in there a 9/16 curve, so that allowed for more of a just visual good aesthetic in terms of placement. Still has plenty of length for a downsize and swelling. So yeah, this is something that I guess personally I would consider more of a actual floating navel if we are gonna give it an actual name. So this is classic floating navel situation. Yeah, I mean for the most part I think we're all aware of A or B, but once again bringing it back to the jewelry, definitely get longer lengths if you don't have again, my personal opinion and possibly a hot take. I don't know. Y'all can decide. But I don't think we should, continuously talk about, hey, it's a floating. Well, I just did, but floating navel, cool. But to our clients, like, yeah, you're getting a floating navel. No, you're getting a traditional navel. How about a little bit of, or the best of both worlds? Just throwing jewelry in there, like. Stop thinking about it as like it's either going to be an A navel or a B navel. How about we throw a bunch of other parts in there? Go for it.
Something I've ended up talking with a lot of clients of like, hey, we need to heal this with a bead, but I think it's very probable in the future you'll be able to wear gems, right? Maybe we're going to heal this narrow apex with a bead, but in the future I think you could wear a small gem on the bottom. Or being very clear, especially when choosing to do this or not do this from the client's perspective, I think this M&M jewelry will be what you wear forever. How do you feel about that? And sort of not seeing that there's more in the mix of what people can wear in the future or other choices, instead of like, this will be a floating navel forever, this will be a gemmed navel forever. I've actually switched a decent amount of people with healing gems who are just like, oh, thank God, put a bead on there. Jesus, I made the wrong choice. And not thinking of it so much of like, it's either this navel or this navel. Those are the rules.
And then next slide. So I personally don't take pictures ever, but this is one of Rachel's clients. So this is, one of the times that we say no. This one, the navel had a firm apex. When you can see like both dots that were marked on there, that would need an entirely long length to pierce through. And that would be, a disservice to this client. Like, hey, yeah, this is pierced, but in the future, I don't know, good luck with jewelry.
Healing
and healing too. But yeah, that's, one of the times we say no. And then you could go to the next slide.
And then the sort of other time that we do pretty often say no is a really like a roll that makes the navel structure disappear completely. In my opinion, there's no real way to solve for that. Those kinds of pressures, a navel piercing is unlikely to survive those kinds of pressures. So yeah, there are definitely still some times where we're just like, yes, we really should not do this. There is still like safety and doing you a disservice. So there are still times to say no, absolutely.
Question.
Yeah.
I've had this come up once or twice in the past month or so. Someone will have a really, really solid navel for it, at least from what I can tell. I'll have them take the seat to see if it collapses, and then I'll end up telling, because everybody sits like this, right? Yeah. And then I'll tell them, like, sit like you're gonna watch Netflix for 4 hours. And then they do this, and that is all gone. In those circumstances, the structures are all still there. It might collapse a little bit more, or roll a little bit. In those situations, is that something you ask for? Is that something you see, or is it one of those? Like, how do you get around?
The additional piece of information I would usually want to see is lay down, and then I watch them actually really sitting back up from laying down is more important to me than the first time they sit down.
Okay.
And so that's going to tell me more about how their abdominal muscles are moving naturally. If it's just a collapse with a little bit of inward, I'll probably still do it, but a complete disappearance, probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, like that floating navel that I had on there, that one did have like that collapse where, it kind of almost pushed forward. And you can't really tell from the pictures, but kind of like...
Yeah, like it all dives in.
But it wasn't fully disappearing, so that's why I was like, I'm down to do this, because it wasn't collapsing within itself.
Okay, fair.
Next slide, Spice Girls. And then, once again, circling back to how we talk to clients about all of these choices that we're making. Sometimes a navel that I should really say no to in talking to the client, offering them choices. I sort of do this thing where like, it's not the client's job to know this, it's my job to tell them. And so I show a lot of sort of maybe navels that might be a no. It's just vibes. Like I can't tell you how to say yes to spicy things. How is the client seemingly mature, whatever age they might be? Do they think they can handle a piercing as a brief experience. I picked up this thing from a friend where he uses the future tense. He'll use this future tense thing where, so in a year, when you don't have this, what other piercing do you want to get? And how do they feel about that? In 2 years, when you're at the beach and you just have a scar, how does that feel to you? And depending on client reaction and how we're feeling that day and all these other factors, sometimes you can do a navel that is temporary for the client. This client in very particular, I took this photo because she was using it as like a personal life event reward. She knew it wasn't going to heal. We very clearly talked about this, still down to get down, and it was like my honor to help her do this, right? And so I do think, again, I have so many photos. I have photos of what rejection looks like. I have scars at a year. It is still our job to make sure they really know as much as possible what they're choosing, and then still to help them make a choice, right? So sometimes you can still do a thing that the internet never has to know about that
Thank you
is
for
a
saying
service
all
to your
of that.
client. What?
Thank you for saying just all of that, because
Yeah.
that's how I feel too. It's in the end of the day, it's what the client wants, and as long as they know what could happen,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and they know it's
And to be clear, like there's still a bunch of nuance, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
not gonna let
Of
a
course.
crying person like make me do a thing I really don't want
Right.
to do. But yeah, it's like how like framing it as a brief experience. Like, how do you feel about scars that you already have? How does it feel if you have a scar here?
Yeah.
Are you gonna be okay with that?
Yeah, I know me and Austin talk a lot to our clients about that too.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we can give clients more of a choice than we think, because if we give them the right information, they can make a somewhat informed choice.
Keyword somewhat though.
Sure. Yeah,
Depending
you
on
can
the
never
age
know.
of the-
Yeah.
I caught a navel that was healed the other day. I actually have photos of that too, because I have so many photos. It should not have healed. It
Yeah, yeah.
completely turned in on itself.
Oh, wow.
She was wearing a 6mm oval on the bottom. It was uncomfortable, which we changed, but her navel had healed with that. It was insane.
One of those
I
that
would
heals
not
out
have
of
pierced
spite.
that navel.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think clients need to know that we can never know either.
Right.
And I try not to frame it as like because people always be like, so maybe, and I'm like, no, friend, this is not going to heal. I do say definite. It's like, you're not going to have this. Is that okay? And see how people react to that, right?
Right.
And next one, the fun ones.
Yep. On the next slide, it's spicy choices that were made. Yeah, for reasons. So everything on the right side, it's the 3 that I did. Everything on the left side, all the cool stuff, is Rachel's. Don't look at it. So yeah, I mean, like, it goes back to spicy choices, but also informed spicy choices. That like double navel that I did at the
Yeah.
very right corner, that person wanted a lower navel.
That looks great.
And
too.
obviously, like, no.
Yeah.
So, like, we opted out for something cool and interesting. To be honest, I haven't seen that person. I don't know where they're at. I hope they're okay. But yeah,
Feels.
it's just, it's you and the client both knowing that these are choices that might not work out, and as long as they're informed. And I guess, like, there's a nuance to that, too. Is this a client that you see often? Is it someone you'll never see again? Or do you know that they can heal or not? But yeah, Rachel's got some other cool stuff to talk about.
I guess in addition to making spicy choices, on the left are sort of 4 that I did, and I actually feel that they weren't that spicy. That I made really clear. Oh, they have an apex. They have a ledge that's visible in all of the major positions. They have enough tissue to go through, and I feel great about that. I actually didn't think they were that spicy. I knew that they were going to get these piercings and very likely heal them. Like you can see in particular that sort of top center of the cinnamon roll. That person came in for a navel piercing, having lots of doubt. And I also had a lot of doubt until I sort of felt on the inside, and they had a clear soft spot on the inside. We could go in one spot that was a doable ledge. I downsized that, and a year we put 2 rings in.
Sick.
But everywhere else on the navel should not be pierced. because it was like a straight vertical ledge. I think I used something really short, like 11-30 seconds. And so like the one next to that, the side-by-side navels, that client came in asking for that. So sick. But also, I still needed to make all the same requirements: apex, ledge, roll. Is this going to be a choice that will heal? And it absolutely was. I've seen them. I've downsized them. That client is cooler than I will ever be. But yeah, so I actually don't think that a lot of these choices were spicy. I think they were still following the same equation that we set out at the beginning and allowed me to say yes to interesting things. Because again, things aren't binary. People might look at the cinnamon roll and be like, look, man, there's no bite. But if you investigate, I think you can say yes a lot more than you think. And the last slide is all of our QR codes. That's the original one that we put on there to the slides. The video is going to be up on YouTube, although there is a video linked there right now.
It's actually right now. We're streaming live, so you guys should open it.
You should totally open that QR code. And then Max did make a Spotify playlist with all of our
Yeah.
Excellent.
Nice.
Yeah, play it at your shop.
Well done.
Some of them may not be child appropriate.
It's okay. The children love bad words. Yeah.
So yeah, that is really what we wanted to talk about. What do y'all want to talk about?
Woo!
Yeah, sick presentation. Thanks for bringing that up. It is navel season. And I don't know, like recently, it must be my bevel theory. I feel like some of mine are just slightly going a little to the left, just barely, and it pisses me the fuck off, and I don't know what I'm doing.
I do, because I've done it.
Yeah, what is it?
My problem, personally, it might not be yours. My problem was as lining up, I was doing like my wrist was doing a twist.
Twist. Okay.
Instead of like firm, gripping overhand straight.
I usually pierce like this. I don't know.
Just keep an eyeball out
Yeah,
for it.
I will.
Yeah, not perfect, but when my stuff turns, it means that I've turned usually.
Yeah, totally.
Sam, what do you think?
I was gonna say you might pay attention to how, like, where your whole body is positioned relative to your client, because if you are piercing kind of from the side here.
Well, I have this whole stance thing.
Yeah.
You know,
So
like,
I usually like when I notice that happening, I'm like, oh, I need to ask people to actually scoot closer to me. on the
I've had,
table and be like over them, so that you're looking straight down at it, and so that you can actually be straight.
Yeah, I'm a short bastard, so I usually make them scoot closer to me too.
Are
It's
you
not
like looking down at your client though, or are you still from the side?
I'm on top of them.
Okay.
Yeah, because I want to like see the tip and everything. And I crush my needles.
I have
on
a
that,
terrible
too,
suggestion for you.
No,
That's
go
worked
ahead.
for me.
And it's not all the time. It's just the one thing that happens every once in a while. I'm like, well, how the fuck?
If it starts to really frustrate you, pierce with your other hand.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it.
Because mostly it makes you slow down.
Yeah, it makes you
That's
stop
It
fair.
makes you slow down. It makes you notice.
That could
the
be
step.
another thing too. I
because it feels
try to get things.
uncomfortable.
Try to go quick because you know.
for sure.
Maybe I should just slow down.
Yeah,
I do it on bridges.
I have a habit of going too fast,
Yeah.
and when I catch myself making the same mistakes again, I either need to slow way down and pretend like I'm doing something for the first time, or use my other hand because it makes me slow down.
That's what I have to do with bridges, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have to go really slow.
Yeah.
Are you doing 2 fingers on top or
Bridges?
No, on
Or
the navel.
The navel, 2 on top, and then just
cool.
1 there. So, and I always use the back of the needle first to
Yeah.
fill it out, and then line the needle up good. I don't know. It works out most of the time, but there's that like
Bevel up or down?
bevel usually up. I
Or
think
smashing,
if
full
I'm
smash, you said?
crushing. No, bevel
Not
down.
full smash,
Bevel
yeah,
down.
like
Yeah.
my
Okay,
approach,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was almost also gonna say my other suggestion might be to like intentionally rotate or overcorrect how you're holding it.
I was gonna start doing that just to see if it's something I'm doing.
Yeah, because it's totally
yeah.
like that's how I know. I don't even know how many people I know who manage septum piercings that way. Just
Right.
Like overcompensating the way that they always pierce crooked.
I
like,
know
that's
how I'm
fine,
going
still
to do it, and that's
accomplishes
wrong.
the
Yeah.
right end result.
That's actually the next. I was thinking about doing that recently because it popped up again last week. I think I had to redo someone's navel, and I was like, maybe I'm just gonna turn it more, even though I don't think it looks. You know what I mean? Just to see. Try it on a friend, maybe. Austin, you want your mandible pierced again?
We can try it. It's basically a scar. It's a 6-gauge navel that.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Let's see.
What about?
You're asking?
I was just gonna say, like, I might get some flack for this, but you also might want to try bevel up.
Bevel up?
Yeah.
I do that more if I crush my needles, but if I'm not crushing it, I go bevel down. I don't know, it just really depends on the person.
I just feel like the tendency to actually not be able to see which direction your bevel is facing is a lot higher when people pierce the bevel. Like you could make a slight twist, not notice, and then when you
Yeah, I've noticed the most piercers, because I was taught by someone that I shouldn't have been taught by, I guess, you know. I've noticed a lot of piercers here pierce bevel up a lot, and I pierce bevel down a lot, so it's just, I don't know.
I do them both.
I do bevel down all the time.
You do bevel down
Yeah,
too?
it's like my favorite.
I know it all depends on everybody, but I do notice that I do it more often than what I see other people do.
I do
Everyone's
feel-
different.
I'm so sorry.
No, I'm done.
I do feel it should be called to mention what Rachel had to say about like just having your client come forward. I contort my body in fucking crazy ways to try and keep my client comfortable where I expect them to be. And you're right, oftentimes you can just say like, keep moving a little bit closer, and then you'll have a much better view of everything that you're doing and just be a little bit more on top of it. And I'm horrible at that.
You
because-
should see this fucker. I should take pictures of him because he doesn't like to touch anyone, so he's always like.
No.
And since I'm a woman, I'm just like on my client. I just feel more comfortable, you know. So yeah.
I will say the thing y'all said about the two not having just like A and B navels. I've been seeing so many navels recently that I've been like, not quite a floating, not quite where you're just like, how do you? I guess like, how do you? I feel sometimes it's hard for me to gauge whether or not when it heals they can put that bigger gem jewelry in. I feel like that's probably something that's been the most complex for me because you know sometimes people come in they expect the double gem and then I look at the anatomy and I'm like, well, not right now. What makes you say, or is there certain things that makes you say like, yeah, but maybe in the future kind of things? Like,
Yeah, so for me, it's the depth.
Yeah.
You know, so like depending on how deep I'm going on the inside, if I notice that. Okay, so first to start off with, if I'm either like, can I put a giant gem on the bottom or not a giant gem? I usually just opt out for creating my own piece. You know, either an M&M or a bead on the bottom. And then depending on that, you know, how deep I do go on the inside, you can kind of see how your jewelry will sit. So, and also, I mean, there's so much nuance to this part, so going all over the place. But you know, marking when laying down, figuring out how deep I'm gonna go, and during like even the consultation to just kind of get a better idea of like this jewelry you can use or that. But if I am going deeper on the inside, that means my jewelry will sit more like this versus like this. So that means, you know, no bigger gem unless we do like a J curve in the future. So that's usually like what I base that off of.
Yeah, sort of
Yeah.
building off of that. It's about like what space they have. Maybe it fully collapses, but maybe not entirely. Like maybe a 4x4 gem is going to work out in the future, but those like prongs might not be comfortable for the healing period, right? And so like, yeah, and it's just gonna be like, hey, we're gonna see what's comfortable for you, but right now I'm sort of choosing comfort for you. Yeah. I got the answer. I think 5/8 is about the max. Longer than that, they're gonna have some drainage issues. You know, when I think about piercing longer lengths, I'm thinking, you know, it's usually gonna be something like a interesting on the bottom, flat, or a bead. And then sort of, I mark people a lot from the sides to know, because the bottom is pretty clear. Where does my top need to be to sort of fit both sides? And if it's gonna be a lot to fit both sides, I probably shouldn't do that. And then sort of when the tissue, like that first sort of like really kind of bulges out, that's a little bit of a spicier choice. You know, kind of comes into some interesting like fascia stuff. Like I'm sure you've pierced navels where they're really dense and you go to sort of like brace and it just, the skin like slides off of that denseness. I think those often have less of a chance of healing because sometimes it's not enough of a wedge all the way through. I'll still talk to people about that, but 5/8 is usually my max. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, I'd use 3/4.
I was gonna say we stopped 3/4 at our studio, but specifically for somebody who's having an issue.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's a great
Yeah.
point. You do want to stock past one size of what you're actually going to use. Because I've definitely used a 9/16 curve, not having 5/8 in stock, and be like, oh, please God, don't be me. Stock past the size that you're actually piercing at. And I mean, 3/4 is actually also for Christina's, but yeah.
What do we feel like is minimum depth on the underneath side for vulnerability? Because I know when I mark standing, just the initial, and then when I do that, I'll mark where it looks like the transition from out to in is, and then I have them lay down, and I look at my projected underneath spot, and if it's not actually still behind the ledge or where it looks like the ledge is, I might adjust that. But are there times when you've like ridden that really close, or where it exits like technically at the edge of the true transition point, and still works out? Because I'm always really nervous about it.
Do you mean when you mark them, then they lay down, and then it's up slightly above where their navel would be?
Yeah, like it
Yeah.
actually looks to be
That
more of
creeps
like a
me out,
stomach
too.
piercing
Yeah.
instead. I feel like that's kind of like the bubble where it's like,
Yeah.
oh God, do I move this in deeper? And there have been times where I like mark standing, I have them lay down, I adjust where I think maybe my depth should go so that it ends up inside of the navel still as they're laying, and then I have them stand up again to make sure that it actually doesn't end up on the back of the navel wall, because that would also be fucked up.
Right.
But
I
I'm
struggle with
like,
that, too.
I'm wondering how comfortable folks feel, or what, because I feel like a vast majority of persons I don't necessarily see back, whether or not people have really good success riding it super, super close to that transition point.
Same.
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I'm like,
I've noticed
okay.
I've noticed exactly that same problem, right?
Yeah.
And so like I get it just depends on how ledgy it is or is not when they lay down. If I can kind of find like the apex on the bottom, I do really want to go as close to that as possible. Because yeah, I think doing like an experimental stomach piercing is a disservice, and I would probably do that. But if I can kind of find like an apex with like my finger or a Q-tip and be like, I feel pretty good about that, then maybe kind of ride that line. But that kind of stuff is almost always going to be a beat for me because it needs to snuggle when they lay down. And then that's another great call of like why I love a gem ball. Because putting something flat on somebody that like is going to flatten out that much when they lay down is going to probably not going to be very comfortable, or that back of that like opal is going to hit their abdomen first and like flange out in weird ways. So yeah, like probably like the combo I use the most is either gem ball and M&M or gem ball and beat all the time.
Yeah, I would say like that's like the best scenario for like deeper equals better. You know, like if you're just piercing on the stomach, obviously not a great time.
So you're saying if you feel a ledge, probably okay, but if not, go mark it deeper.
And then you know, pack more jewelry pieces. Unfortunately.
Well, we have all the sizes usually.
Yeah, so the answer is we'll see. But that has happened, and I said, oh, this is too high, I can't go deeper, I shouldn't do this navel piercing, because on stuff like that I do end up spending like marking during the anatomy consult just to be like giving them a fuller answer. I don't know.
Good question.
Sick. Okay. Sick. We're done. Sick. Yeah. Somebody use the QR code.